I'm Izzy, and my grandparents brought me up. It's not that my parents weren't around at all, it's just that they worked in New York, and, well, they were workaholics, so I ended up staying with my grandparents. My sister, Beatrice, or B as we all call her, lived with my parents. I don't know why this was exactly. It just kinda happened. My parents visited every Christmas and occasionally during spring break, but not having them around was normal for me. Then one summer, my parents showed up with B and told me they were moving to town and we were all going to live together. At first, this was weird as I was so used to barely seeing them, but then I decided it could be good, right? But, well, living with a little sister was more complicated than I thought. It's kind of bothersome. In fact, B even pushed me, an average drama-free girl at school, into a bunch of nonsense scandals. B's a sweet kid, but she's on the shy side and she can be a bit clingy. Probably because she still needed some time to fit into this new place, so she followed me and clung on to me all day long. But I just didn't get why she had to copy everything I did. I wore ripped skinny jeans, so she bought the exact same pair. I wore glitter pink lip gloss, so she did too. I got a new phone for my birthday, and she begged our parents until they caved and gave her one too. That kinda sucked, as I'd waited for ages for a decent phone, and she got one just by nagging. She had her own bedroom, but each night she came into my room and made me tell her stories about everyone at school, as she said this would help her make new friends faster. We'd chat about school, boys, friends, girl stuff. Then she'd fall asleep in my room. She stayed here pretty much every night, so in the end, our parents bought us bunk beds. But she then went and bragged about everything I told her to her classmates, so they'd think she's cool, since she got to hang out with seniors and knew their stories. One time, she leaked out the secret that my best friend Lee had a crush on Paul, and she told her friends that I was surely gonna be spring queen at the next prom. What? I didn't even think about trying out for that. Never! I'm not interested in that kind of attention. And obviously, the rumors got out. Lee stormed up to me, yelling and all, saying she never wanted to be friends again. I tried to explain things to her, but she didn't listen. And for the rest of the day, every time I walked across the hallway, the popular girls would smirk at me and say things like, "Who do you think you are?" Like, seriously, as if you could be spring queen? I hated this. I just wanted to have a normal, quiet life at school. I didn't like this attention, nor did I have any longing to be spring queen. This made me so mad. So later in the afternoon, I stormed into B's classroom during recess, dragged her aside, and told her to stop ruining my life with her big mouth. I didn't have much time to talk to her about exactly what had happened because I had to return to class, but I made sure to make my point and threw her a dirty look before I left. She looked pretty scared. I stomped back to class, but my tantrum didn't last long because during English Lit, my teacher paired me on a group project with two of my friends and Andy, the cutest guy ever. This was the perfect excuse to use the group study time to organize a meetup at my house. The plan was set. I just needed to come home, put on my cutest outfit, and wait for them to come over. I was so nervous that I didn't really mind about the feud with my sister anymore. I excitedly told her about Andy coming over, and she helped me tidy up my room and braid my hair. They arrived, and studying didn't last long. Soon, we were watching movies and playing games. Then B suggested we play 7 Minutes in Heaven. That's so childish, but the others seemed up for it. Besides, I figured it could work in my favor with Andy. We spun the bottle to decide, and when it was Andy's turn, B asked to spin it for him. Then she winked over at me and Andy. Then, to my horror, the bottle pointed at her. What was that? Is she stealing my crush too? This little brat. She and Andy went into the closet, and after 7 excruciating minutes, they walked out looking all smiley. I was so mad, but I kept my cool until they left. Then I screamed at B that she was a horrible, sneaky girl and to stay away from me. It got so heated, Mom had to come and tell me to stop. I slammed my bedroom door shut and even put my dresser in front of it so B couldn't come in. The next day, she tried apologizing to me, but I ignored her. She even left a candy bar on my pillow, but I just chucked it in the trash. To make matters worse, Andy approached me at school and went on about the fun he'd had at mine and how cool B was. What? So, what exactly did those two do in the closet? This was awful. Then prom day came. I didn't have a date, Lee still wasn't talking to me, and trying to avoid B in my own house was draining. Then Lee called me up excitedly and told me Paul had asked her to prom. I was so happy for her, and we made up. She invited me over to get ready for prom at hers. I packed my dress, my makeup, but my eyebrow pencil was missing. I mumbled, "Ugh, B," as she must have taken mine again. I knew she was at swimming practice, so I went through her drawer to find my makeup stuff. Nothing. Then I spotted something under her pillow. It looked like the end of a black pencil. This must be it. I took it out, but it wasn't an eyebrow pencil, just a normal pen. It was in the middle of a notebook. So curious. I pulled it out. That's when I glimpsed my name on the open page. So I picked it up to see what it was. It's her diary. I read through the first few pages. She said she loved me very much and that she was happy that she finally got to live in the same house as me. I found a specific page that was a little ripped. It was the day I yelled at her. I saw tears dried out on her words. She wrote how she really thought I was very beautiful and would win the Spring Queen title, and how she just wanted to help me and Andy get together, so she suggested the 7 minutes game. And she tried to aim the bottle at me, but it went wrong. And that when she was in the closet with Andy, she was only saying nice things about me to him. And she also found out that Andy had feelings for me. Also, she wrote that sleeping alone was so scary, but she didn't want to bother me anymore. She said she'd ruined everything and wished she could move back to her old house. I felt so guilty, and I just cried all the way to Lee's place and later told her everything. I was not in the mood for prom anymore, so even though everyone complimented me on my dress, I couldn't enjoy myself. Andy came forward and asked me to dance, but I couldn't quit thinking about B. I apologized to Andy for my bad mood, and he was so understanding. We ended up taking a walk outside, and I vented to him about how I'd misunderstood my sister. Then, suddenly, I spotted her with friends at the photo booth at the entrance. They looked like they were having so much fun, except for her. She looked so sad. I grabbed her arm from behind. She turned around, shocked, then quickly stepped back and went to leave, but I stopped her and told her I was sorry. I hugged her, and we both cried, and continuously said sorry to each other. Then I suddenly heard my name on the mic inside the venue. She then said, "Go, go! They must be crowning you as Spring Queen right now! Told you so!" Turns out I wasn't Spring Queen, but I did make prom court, which I guess is kinda cool. I was wrong to ever be mad at B. She never meant to cause any harm. I know that now. Later that evening, Lee and Paul came over and thanked B, as it was basically down to her that they were now together. Then Lee winked at Andy, who was standing next to me, and said, "You should also thank B, because it looks like we're having another couple here." Talk about awkward! So we both just shrugged it off and pretended not to understand what she meant. We spent the rest of the night dancing and having a great time. It felt so good to have my best friend and my little sis back in my life. I've now realized that having Bella with me all the time isn't so bad. Yes, she's annoying at times, but all she wanted was to have her big sis around. And I guess I have to admit that I like having my little sis around too.
Hi everyone, Jack here. I'm 17 and I live with my mom, dad, and sis. We're pretty much a normal family. I suppose I do okay at school. I'm not super popular or anything, as I am a little on the shy side, but I'm not unpopular either. I'm really good at sports studies, and I definitely want to pursue this further when I go to college and stuff. Anyway, I want to tell you about my best friend Danny, and the girl of my dreams, Amy. I first met Danny at the age of 10. We were both at the local pool, and back then, I was energetic and, well, I did a lot of stuff without thinking it through. I started splashing about in the pool, and soon I realized I couldn't put my feet on the ground. I couldn't swim, so yeah, this was bad. I began to panic and tried shouting out for help, but a load of water ended up in my mouth. Then Danny appeared and helped me over to the shallow end. Turns out he was new to town and was starting at the same school that I went to. After that, we became best friends. Danny's this effortlessly cool, stylish, and handsome guy. He was always more popular than me, and all the girls liked him, but still, he chose to be friends with me. Being around him was great fun. We hung out, played football, and goofed around. There's this girl from school called Amy. She's popular and beautiful. She always wears these pretty dresses, and well, she just stands out. Problem is, I wasn't the only one to notice this. Practically every boy at school had a crush on her. I didn't think I stood a chance with her, but then the school picnic happened. I ended up in the same group as her, so I went over to her and tried to talk. I felt so nervous that I couldn't get any words out. Then I tripped over a branch and accidentally fell into her arms. In that moment, I imagined we looked into each other's eyes and she could see how much I liked her. Then we'd kiss and date and marry and live happily ever after. But yeah, that wasn't reality. In real life, I was stiff as a log and was so embarrassed. I quickly snapped out of it, got up and muttered out, "Sorry." She giggled and said, "No problem. I hope you didn't hurt yourself." Amazingly, we started chatting after that. Things quickly changed between Amy and me. We talked a lot on Messenger, and I often sat with her at lunch. She was so fun to be around, and I loved spending time with her. Then we started dating. I often had to pinch myself to convince myself that yes, I really was dating the most beautiful girl in school. We both loved nature, so we often spent our weekends going for walks and exploring new places. Our first kiss happened in my room. We were meant to be working on our science project, but I couldn't stop staring at her. She was just so beautiful. So I leaned over and kissed her. It was like fireworks were going off around us. Talk about magical. After that, we became pretty much inseparable. I often went out to restaurants with her family, and she regularly came over for dinner with mine. Things were amazing. She was my princess. With her around, I felt so happy, and I couldn't imagine my life without her in it. Then one night, she texted me, "I love you." This made me smile, and I sent back, "I love you too, Amy." Then, to my surprise, she messaged back, "What is love anyway?" I didn't understand what she meant, but before I can send another message asking this, she sent me a video of her with Danny, my best friend Danny. Then she messaged me, "This is what real love looks like." Couldn't believe what I just saw. I immediately threw my phone across the room. I was so heartbroken. How could she do this to me? And with my best friend? I cried days and nights. It was horrible. I felt like I'd never be happy again. I rarely cry, so my family was really worried and tried every way to console me, but nothing they said or did could cheer me up. Worse still, I was dreading going back to school and having to see them together. They didn't make it easy for me. As soon as I got to my locker, I saw them there, kissing. Word got around that they were very much in love. So much for her ever loving me. It hurt so much. Danny didn't seem bothered that he'd hurt me. That's the problem with Danny. He doesn't think sometimes. He just goes after what he wants without a care for who he stomps on in the process. Plus, we weren't as close as before anymore. Ever since high school started, he'd been hanging out with some bad guy. I told him that Amy was a liar and that she would soon go off him. But he just shrugged and said, "Whatever." I know you're probably wondering why I stayed friends with Danny after what he did. I guess I'm too nice, but I just couldn't break our 7-year relationship over this. It was bad enough I'd lost the love of my life. I couldn't afford to lose my best friend too. Yes, I felt betrayed and angry, but Amy had made her choice, and it wasn't me. Then one night I was on my way home on the metro. The only free seat was next to Amy, so I sat down next to her. At first it was awkward, and neither of us spoke. Then I asked her, "Why did you cheat on me?" She replied, "Well, Danny's the richest, most popular, and best-looking guy in school. I only used you to get closer to him." This was horrible to hear. I was so mad that I chose to stand for the rest of the journey back. The next day, I tried telling Danny what Amy had said. He told me I was just being jealous, shoved me, and yelled at me that I needed to stop being so bitter. We didn't talk for 2 weeks after that. I felt so lonely, but it turns out neither Danny nor Amy were the people I thought they were. Danny tried calling, but I ignored his calls. He also sent me some lame apology messages, but I didn't reply. Then one day, he showed up on my doorstep, gave me chocolate, and asked me to go for a walk in the woods with him. I took my GoPro with me. As I said before, I love nature. I always film the scenery on my walks. I asked him if he truly loved Amy, and to my surprise, he said that girls were like chewing gum. You had to chew till the end and then spit them out. He said he would use Amy one last time, then finish with her, then let his friends have her. Then he would move to another city and do it all over again. This was shocking to hear. I knew he could be reckless, but I didn't think the boy who saved my life when we were 10 was capable of being so cruel. I told him I never wanted to talk to him again, and I stormed off. My GoPro had been recording the whole time, so it was about time I took revenge on my shattered heart, wasn't it? Thing is, as mean as Amy has been, I still care about her. I thought about it a lot, and eventually decided that she deserved to know the truth, so I sent her the recording. Even after seeing it, she made out I'd edited it to make Danny sound bad, as I was just jealous. I knew that her parents thought she was so sweet and innocent, so I told her that if she didn't split up with Danny, I'd send them the video clip. She tried to resist at first, but soon she gave up and begged me not to show it to them. I later found out that she'd continued to see Danny in secret for weeks after that, but eventually, she saw the dark side to him. She even came up to me at school and thanked me for trying to help her, and apologized for hurting me. I didn't try to save her from Danny because I was feeling sympathetic toward her or anything like that. Instead, I believe that witnessing a crime is as bad as committing it. I guess that as mean as Amy had been to me, I didn't want to see her hurt, especially not by that jerk. Actually, after that, she's even reached out to me once and asked me to be her boyfriend again. But of course, I wasn't a fool. A leopard can't change its spots, so I made it clear to her that my answer was and would always be no, and that we should just stay friends. While me and Danny, we aren't friends anymore. I have other friends, but it's hard, as a part of me does still miss him, but I don't like the person he's become. Thanks for listening to my story. I hope that you guys don't go through what I did, but if you do, I hope you find the strength to do the right thing, however hard this may be.
Hey there, I'm Connor, and something really creepy happened to me, so I'm going to tell you all about it. I have to warn you though, it's on the spooky side. So there's a chance it may freak you out so much you have to sleep with the lights on. There's also a chance you won't believe me, and that's up to you, but please remember that this is real for me. I believe in this stuff, and always have. In fact, I've been obsessed with the afterlife since I was little. I used to have open dreams, where strangers would come and try to connect with me. It was often ambiguous that I barely saw their faces. All I could remember after awakening was just a shadowy or indistinct shape with strange gestures, like a message. When I told my parents about them, my mom made it out that it was all nonsense, but my grandma assured me that there might be some spirits trying to tell me something. She told me not to worry, as most spirits had no intention of causing me harm. Sometimes these spirits would tell me things. Once, one appeared with a dog. Then a month later, my dad came home with a puppy. Then another time I dreamt that Grandma had passed away. I didn't dare to tell anyone about that dream. I was so scared it would come true. Then, you guessed it, a few months later, she died. I came to dread those dreams, and worst of all, now I didn't have Grandma to confide in about them. To be fair, as I grew older, the dreams stopped, but my fascination with the afterlife didn't. I knew not to mess around with this kind of stuff, as doing so was bad news. Grandma had always told me that. But then I started dating Jennifer, and I really wanted to show her this side to the world. So I bought a Ouija board from Amazon. Well, it's a flat board with letters and numbers on it that's used as a gateway to the spirit world. I knew the rules. Never try this at home, as that was asking for trouble. The last thing I needed was to unleash a poltergeist or something worse in my house. Also, never ask the spirit to show themselves. So the plan was to sneak into the old house in my neighborhood that had just sold and was currently empty. I told Jennifer about my plan. She'd never done anything like this before, and although she was skeptical, she was also excited. That's what I love about her. She's so brave and adventurous. We met in the house's front yard at 3 a.m. as we planned, and both of us were seriously in the mood when we were trying to break into it. Yeah, I know, this sounds bad. But we didn't want to make a mess of the place or anything, we just wanted somewhere empty where we could test out the board. Firstly, we set the mood by lighting candles, incense, and burning sage. Before I started, I grabbed Jennifer's hand and said out loud, "Please don't show up, evil forces." Then I placed a silver coin on the board to deter bad spirits. Then we both placed our index fingers on the planchette, which is a movable pointer, and took a deep breath. I called out into the darkness, "Is anyone there? If spirits are living here, please talk to us." Nothing. Not even the slightest bit of wind. Jennifer laughed, and this annoyed me. I suppose she could tell from my face that I was mad. So she smiled at me and said, "I'm sorry, let's try again." Then placed her finger back. Then I said, "If there's anyone there, we would like to make contact." I was getting goosebumps right at that moment. And the wind started to pick up. The stillness broke, and the darkness around us seemed to move. Excited, I yelled out, "Is anyone there?" Then it got super crazy. Like it was this scene from a movie with dirt swirling around us. The planchette started moving slowly. Jennifer looked at me and said, "What are you doing?" "It's not me, I promise," I replied. I looked up at her, and the moment our eyes met, we knew the planchette was moving by itself. I continued asking, "How many spirits are there?" It took a minute of silence for the planchette to move to 1. It was becoming interesting. "Are you a good spirit?" It moved faster. YOUGUESS. Okay, I considered it a yes, and continued questioning it on some simpler things. "Can I know your name?" The answer was SAMEASHER. At this point, I could hear Jennifer freak out. It was kind of creepy because I didn't call her name even once. I said, "If you're really here, prove it." Jennifer jumped up. "Hey, we promised not to ever ask it to prove its appearance." Suddenly, a gust of wind came out of nowhere and blew out one of the candles. Jennifer yelled at me to stop this now. Then she ran out of there. I quickly said to the spirit, "Nice to know you, but it's time for us to go. Goodbye." And at the same time swept the planchette over the goodbye symbol on the board to quit. Then I picked up the stuff and chased after Jennifer to check if she was okay. She was completely freaked out and told me she was never doing that again. The problem was, I couldn't stop thinking about the spirit. The new owners would soon move into the house, so I didn't have many opportunities left to go back there. So 1 week later, again at 3 a.m., I persuaded my daredevil friends Austin and Miguel to meet me there. I set the board up, and we began. I asked a few questions, and nothing happened at first. Then after a while, the board kept pointing out meaningless letters. I actually thought it was the others messing about. They soon got bored and all thought it was just my imagination all the time. Feeling annoyed, Austin left to go to the toilet, and Miguel and I carried on. I believed in my previous experience, so I persistently continued asking, "Do you know who's in the toilet now?" But still, the board only gave out random numbers. When Austin came back, Miguel gave Austin the numbers we'd recorded and said that this time it might not work and we should just go. The color drained from his face. It turns out the numbers were his own social security number. Austin began accusing this of being a setup. I told him it wasn't. I guess he was curious as he sat back down and joined in. And that's when Miguel asked a stupid question. "How much longer is this loser Connor kid alive?" I gave him a dirty look and said, "I told you not to joke around." Then the planchette started moving, stopping on the number 1, then 0. 10 years. I only have 10 years left. This was awful. I was too young to die in just 10 years' time. But no, the planchette continued to move. And to my horror, I watched it go between the letters D, A, Y, S. "Quit it, guys. This isn't funny," I shouted out to them. They stared back at me with a mixture of shock and fear. Okay, I was pretty sure they hadn't moved it. They urged me to end the game and go home, not forgetting to tell me to never play this game again. Easy for them to say. They're not the ones being told they will die in 10 days. I couldn't stop thinking about what happened. It was awful. I was so stressed out it took me ages to fall asleep. Then when I eventually did, I had an open dream. I dreamt of a spirit girl who was walking to school with me. Then suddenly she pushed me into traffic and a car was coming. I woke up in hot sweats. 3 days later, I sneaked to the house again by myself and asked only one question. "How much longer do I live?" And she answered, 7 DAYS. So it couldn't be a random answer. The spirit was counting down my remaining days on Earth. 3 days later, I still couldn't stop myself from going there and repeating the same question again, and the answer was 4. I couldn't just wait to die. I had to do something. So I told my parents about it, but they didn't believe me, and even scolded me for playing weird games so late at night. On the day my time was meant to be up, they saw the state I was in. I couldn't stop shaking and refused to get out of bed. There was no way I was going near a road today, so my mom rang the school and said I was sick. Then she stayed home from work and barely left my side. That day went so slowly, but nothing happened. It's a month later now and I'm still alive. I did end up grounded for 3 months for sneaking out at night and terrifying my parents. When my punishment's over, there's no way I'll be taking the Ouija board to any more empty houses. In fact, I've stuck it in the attic, and that's where it's staying forever. So that's my story. You can decide for yourself if you're willing to try it or not. But my main advice to you is don't meddle with this stuff, as it's definitely not worth it.
I'm so excited, as it's my graduation ceremony tomorrow. Eek! And today, I'm on my way to the airport to pick my mom up. I can't wait to see her, but, well, it's complicated. I grew up in Philly, but I've been studying here in Toronto for the last 3 years. I'm so grateful to God for letting me be a girl because, girls' lives are way more colorful than boys' lives are. Clothes, makeup, shoes, you name it. For girls, it's just so much more fun. I understand I'm probably confusing you. Well, up until the age of 18, I lived life as a boy. Kai. Actually, Kai's my legal name. I grew up with toy trucks, dinosaur wallpaper, and a rocket-shaped playhouse. Then, at 2 years old, Mom moved into a villa out in the countryside. It was just us and our old maid Rita. Meanwhile, my father and grandparents stayed in the city and ran the family company together. Back then, all I knew was my family was rich and successful, but I didn't think much about it. Hey, I was just a kid. All I cared about was getting to choose what color tumbler I had my juice in. Mom always said we moved away because of her migraines, which worsened in hectic surroundings. Nonsense. She just wanted to keep me away from the family so they wouldn't figure out I was actually a girl. Crazy, huh? So I must have known I was a girl, right? The thing is, when you're little, you pretty much believe everything your mom tells you. So when she said I was a boy, then I had no reason to think otherwise. Still, I was drawn to girly things like a magpie was to anything shiny. For instance, I tried putting my mom's sparkly hair clips in my short hair, but Mom caught me, took them out, and told me they weren't for boys. Another time, when I was at a playdate at this boy's house, I peered into his sister's room and saw all of the Barbies and dolls. Mesmerized, I took one and started playing with it, but then I heard him laughing at me, and he teased me that I was a boy and I shouldn't like gross things like dollies. I didn't like being teased, so after that, I tried to keep my liking for girly stuff to myself. I pretended to like action figures, aliens, and cars, but to be honest, I didn't care much for them at all. But the older I got, the harder it was for my mom to keep up the lie. The trickiest part being the school restrooms. To hide the secret, Mom told me the bathrooms at school were dirty, and if I used them, I'd end up with scaly green skin. So every day on the break, Rita would come and take me home to go to the toilet. At first, people at school thought this was weird, but then I guess they just put it down to odd things that rich people do. The other boys annoyed me. I didn't want to play football or run around the playground pretending to be a gladiator. Instead, I wanted to hula hoop with the girls and plait the manes of their toy ponies. So I did just that. One time, when I was waiting to get picked up from school, me and my friend were flicking through her girly magazine. Then suddenly, Mom stormed up to me and dragged me out of the girl zone. Then on the ride home, in a serious voice, she said, "Kai, boys have to play with boys. It's just the way it is." This sucked, as I didn't want to play with the boys, but I didn't want to upset my mom, so I stopped playing with the girls. From then onward, I mostly just sat by myself and read fairy tales about princesses and mermaids, which I disguised in the covers of boys' books. My mom must have realized how I felt, so she didn't want to risk me being around other girls, which is why at 11, she insisted I went to an all-boys school. That sucked, as I had never really gotten along with other boys, if not to say that I hated them. But then, during lunch on my first day at the new school, this boy called Kevin sat down next to me and passed me half of his candy bar. We became best friends after that, and even built a den together in the nearby woods. Hanging out with him were my happiest days, as in those moments I just felt free. Then one day during a biology class, the teacher passed us sheets with diagrams of boys' bodies. My body didn't look like that. Was there something wrong with me? Confused, I decided to confide in Kevin about this. He was also a boy, so he could help me, right? I held up the sheet and whispered to him, my body is different to this. Before Kevin even had a chance to answer, one of the other boys shouted out, Kai's different from us. Let's go check it out. Then, to my horror, some of them lifted me and started carrying me toward the bathroom. I was screaming at the top of my voice. Luckily, the teacher ran out into the hallway after me and demanded the boys put me down at once. My mom rushed to school ASAP to take me home, as she received a call from my teacher about the incident. She tried cheering me up with ice cream, but it didn't work. I was so upset and confused. Mom, why am I different from other boys? She gave a wounded look, sighed, then in a quiet voice said, Before I tell you the truth, I need you to understand that I love you, Kai, and everything I do is to protect you. She hugged me close to her, then continued, I was so desperate for a child, but after years of trying, it felt like it wasn't meant to be. Then I found out that your dad cheated on me with another woman, and she was pregnant with a boy. I stared at Mom with wide eyes, patiently waiting to hear what came next, because so far, nothing made sense. This was hard to bear, but just when I thought my heart would break, well, I fell pregnant with you. You have to understand, your father and grandparents have very old-fashioned mindsets on the company and having a male heir to inherit it. So, even though his mistress ended up having a baby girl, and your father agreed to fund them both only if they moved to Miami, I knew you'd never be respected in your father's eyes, not as a girl. That mistress of his would make sure their daughter came back and got everything over you. I just couldn't let that happen. So I lied to everyone that you were a boy. I know you're probably angry with me, and I don't blame you. But you can't tell your father the truth. You can't tell anyone the truth. Wow. So, I was a girl? Now everything started to fall into place. This explained a lot. But of course I was furious. I'd been forced to live a lie just to please my mom. It took a few days before I began to calm down and be more understanding. I guess things must have been really hard for her too. Also, I was kind of relieved I was actually a girl, as deep down I'd always felt a desire to wear pretty dresses and play with dolls. I told Mom this and said I loved being a girl, so she made a compromise with me. I'd continue living as Kai until I was 18, and then I would go and study abroad, as the girl I'd always dreamed of being. After that, I moved schools to keep up the secret. It sucked that I didn't get a chance to say goodbye to Kevin, but I was relieved to go to a co-ed school again. Mom said I could hang out with the other girls as long as I kept the secret. Then, when I started high school, things became more complicated. Firstly, my voice was naturally soft, so I had to put on this gruff voice, which would leave me with a sore throat by the end of the day. So I just became one of those kids who didn't say much. I had to spend ages each morning wrapping a bandage around my chest to flatten it, and then I hid beneath baggy t-shirts and sweaters. I also had to do this boy walk. Then there was the bathroom. I swear everyone thought I had bladder problems, as I was the kid who always asked to go to the bathroom mid-class to avoid the other boys. At least there's one good thing out of this was that I didn't have to deal with sweaty PE, as Mom had told the principal that I had a health problem, so I could stay out of these risky activities, especially swimming lessons. But the struggles would never stop. I often looked at the girls with their glossy lips and in their cute vest tops with envy. Oh, how I longed to be able to be who I wanted to be. Finally, high school finished, and true to her word, Mom sent me off to a college in Canada. She sorted all of the paperwork out for me. There, I changed my name to Leanna, and I started my new, exciting life as a girl. I love long, shiny mermaid hair, so I started wearing a wig. I watched so many YouTube videos on how to apply makeup, painted my nails, wore pretty outfits, and tried walking in heels. Okay, all of these things would take some practice, but it still felt amazing. I was finally free of my old fake life, and I could just be me. But I knew my family couldn't find out the truth, as it could have catastrophic effects for me and my mom. So I still had to dress and act like Kai again whenever I FaceTimed Dad or my grandparents. Ugh. Time sure flies when you're having fun, doesn't it? I couldn't believe I was graduating tomorrow, and I was so grateful that Mom would be here to see it. When I picked her up from the airport, we both hugged and cried, then hugged some more. Through sobs, she blurted out, "Look at you! You look so different." Thanks, Mom. I smiled and wiped her tears away. Luckily, Dad's workaholic, so he didn't even ask to come. Phew, as that would have been an awkward situation. As I wheeled Mom's suitcase out of the airport, she said to me, "We just need to take some photos of you graduating as Kai to show the rest of the family." I didn't want to be Kai on my special day, but I knew it was something that had to be done. So I forced a smile and said, "Sure, Mom, but let's do it where no one else can see us. I don't want my friends thinking I've gone crazy." The graduation ceremony was awesome. It felt so good to be up on that stage collecting my degree as my true self, glossy hair and all. Afterward, I took Mom to my favorite restaurant to continue the celebrations. As I twirled a piece of pasta around my fork, I said to her, "It feels so good to live life as a girl." I was thinking, I want to go back to Philadelphia and tell everyone the truth about who I am. My mom's face dropped, and then she said something totally unexpected.
It was a normal Monday morning. I was standing by my locker when this Layla girl walked over, leaned against the locker next to mine, and talked to me in this sultry voice. "Hi, handsome. Do you have any plans after school?" I looked around in confusion. Huh? Was she talking to me? Usually girls like Layla didn't talk to guys like me. I mean, come on, look at her. She's the hottest girl in school. While I'm Felix, just your average-looking nerdy guy. I awkwardly replied, "Oh, hi, I'm just doing my homework after school, bye." Then I left her there, dumbfounded. But it didn't end there. At the end of school, she approached me again and asked, "Do you want to hang out with me?" Followed by a wink. No thanks, I really have to finish my paper on the French Revolution." Then I walked off. Man, did she really want to hang out with me? No way. She must have lost a bet or something. Even on the next day, Layla, one more time, made a beeline for me with this scary, determined look on her face while I was chatting with my friends. And in a serious tone, she said, "Look, Felix, do you want to be my boyfriend?" What? All my friends started to cheer. I was so embarrassed that I shooed them away to get some privacy with Layla. I'm flattered, but no." She scowled at me. "Excuse me? Do you realize that I'm Layla Hall, the prettiest and most popular girl in this entire school? Not to mention a member of the cheerleading team?" Ugh, cheerleaders are so dramatic. I calmly replied, "Sorry, but you're just not my type." She shouted back, "What? I'm everybody's type!" I just shrugged and left. My God, that was awkward. But at least she got the hint now, right? Well, wrong. Because that's when the trouble just began. Firstly, it was this flood of junk emails and newsletters. Then strange phone calls from the spa and nail salon, asking if I had made an appointment for the day, which I obviously didn't. On top of that, there's a fake Facebook account that started spreading unflattering pictures of me around, picking my nose in French class, pulling this weird tongue-out concentration face as I checked over my essay. There was even a slow-mo clip of me chewing like a camel as I enjoyed my burger. Man, I was an ugly eater. While I was scrolling through these pics, Layla jumped out at me with a big smirk on her face. "Be my boyfriend, then the pranks'll stop." Right, of course it was her. Didn't she have better things to do? I shook my head and said, "No thanks. This still beats being with an annoying girl like you." Then a few days later, as I walked into school, I noticed that everyone was giving me dirty looks. Was my shirt inside out or something? Nope. So what was the problem? I asked some of my friends and, geez, Layla told everyone that I kissed her, then ghosted her. She's a real-life Harley Quinn. Hot, but totally crazy. Only a lunatic like the Joker could love her. I'd had enough of her antics. I couldn't let her make me look like the bad guy for something I didn't do. So at lunch, I charged over to her table and yelled in her face, "Are you crazy? Why can't you understand that I don't like you?" Then I shouted so everyone could hear me, "Hey, listen, this rumor about me kissing and ghosting Layla is a total lie. She made it all up because I refused to date her. So please, save your dirty looks for someone else. Thank you." Layla shoved past me and ran out of there. Ugh, okay, maybe I was a little harsh. But you'd brought it on yourself, princess. Then during French class, she was absent, but no one knew where she went. Was it maybe because of me? Nah, probably not. But as I was walking home, I spotted her sitting alone on a swing in the playground. Just go, Felix. This girl only brings trouble, I thought to myself. But oh man, she looked so sad. So the next thing I knew, I was walking over and sat on the swing next to her. I asked, "Why weren't you in French class?" "Just leave me alone. Stop pretending you care." "Look," I took a deep breath, then continued. I'm sorry for yelling at you in front of the whole school. That wasn't cool. But what you did to me wasn't cool either. Shall we call it even? Layla stayed quiet for a bit, but then she nodded and smiled at me. Well, that wasn't so bad, right? So from then onward, everything was fine between us. She even smiled at me in the hallway. Whenever I saw Layla, this warm feeling came over me, and I couldn't stop grinning. Once, I even spent my entire lunch break trapezing around school just so I could catch a glimpse of her face. Oh boy, I think I've fallen for Layla. But why now? I tried to ignore these feelings, hoping they'd eventually go away. But then Valentine's Day came along, and Layla, being the popular girl she is, received enough roses to open a florist. Ugh, how annoying. I needed to do something. So after school, I went to her house with some chocolates and a teddy bear. As soon as she opened the door, I blurted out, I know I'm a big dumb idiot. Rejecting you was a huge mistake. Please, will you be my Valentine? I stood there red-faced and prepared for rejection. But she just snatched the gift out of my hands, then said, Yeah, okay then. Oh my God, I couldn't believe it. Me, your regular nerdy guy, was dating the most popular girl in school. Love is really unpredictable. I was amazed at how open she was to my nerdy stuff. She even watched The Mandalorian with me and cooed whenever she saw Baby Yoda. But the one thing that didn't gel so well between us was, yep, you guessed it, studying. Layla didn't seem to care about her grades, and I didn't want her to fail, so I offered to be her tutor. But she was constantly yawning and staring out of the window whenever we started studying. Felix, I have an idea. Why don't you do my homework for me? In the meantime, I can go to cheerleading practice as we have an important contest coming up, and it means the world to me, just like your math quizzes do to you. What? Was she serious? My God, I hated cheating like this. But she gave me that puppy-eyed look, and me being the sucker I am, I agreed. Thanks, Felix, you're the best. She kissed me on the cheek, then immediately passed me a huge pile of homework. I asked her why she had so much, and she explained that because she didn't understand it, she let them pile up. But hold on, why did she have Spanish? She was in French class with me, not Spanish. But she just shrugged and said her parents forced her to study it outside of school. Oh, my poor little pumpkin. One day, like usual, I stopped by her place to pick up her homework, but she wasn't home. That was odd. Today wasn't cheerleading practice, so where could she be? I looked through the stack that she asked her mom to give me and saw some Spanish worksheets. So I said to her mom, Oh, she must be in her Spanish lesson, right? Her mom looked a bit confused, then laughed. You know Layla, she's far too stubborn to agree to extra classes. Huh? So the papers weren't hers? Then whose it was? And why? Suddenly I felt this uncomfortable feeling itching under my skin. I decided to confront her later at school. Then the next day I was walking through the hallway looking for Layla when I suddenly heard some guys cheering, something about getting an A in Spanish. Wait a minute, did he say Spanish? I turned to see who it was, and to my shock it was Hector, the captain of the soccer team. Hector was popular for being all handsome and everything, but also for sucking at school. Someone must have done his homework for him, and you guessed it, yeah. This someone was me. Ah, it all made sense now. Layla and Hector must be a couple. They may have been hot stuff, but they both sucked at studying. So she was using me to do both of their homework. It all made much more sense now. None of this relationship was real. It was all just an act. And no way was I letting them get away with this. I had a perfect plan to expose them. During lunch, I sat down at the table closest to Hector. Then I went into lovey-dovey overload with Layla. I fed her cheese fries, then I stroked her hair and loudly told her how soft it was. I quickly glanced over at Hector for his reaction, but nothing. He seemed more interested in her burger than her. Layla raised an eyebrow at me. Are you okay? You're acting really weird. I laughed loudly, then placed my arms around her, then said, it was actually more like shouting, Oh, because you're so cute! But why was there still no reaction from Hector? He and his friends even cheered, and on his way out of the canteen, he gave me a thumbs up. Layla didn't look fazed at all either. Man, somebody call the academy, 'cause these two deserved an Oscar. My plan was a massive fail. Ugh, this was so frustrating. I fell silent and Layla noticed and gave me this quizzing look. Something is definitely off. You're being really strange. Okay, if she wanted to know, then fine. So I blurted out. I know that the Spanish papers belong to Hector. You're together and you're just using me to do all your homework. I'm not stupid, you know. Nice meeting you, but please don't ever talk to me again. Then I left without saying a word. Well, that's the end of my story. A rather sad one, right? I would be lying if I said I wasn't feeling down about it. I truly do love her. Whatever. I'm going to college in a few months and I'll get to meet a cute, geeky girl who won't trick me into doing some other dude's homework. Oh, sorry guys, someone's calling me. My God, it's Layla. What does she want? We're done. Stop calling. What? Fine. Promise you'll leave me alone after this? Okay, wait, I'm coming downstairs. Oh my God. Layla's at my front door and she insists to not leave unless I have a talk with her. Ugh. Don't move, everyone. I'll tell you every detail as soon as I'm back. Jesus, guys, you won't believe what Layla's just told me. The thing is that her cheerleading team had to practice a lot for upcoming contests, which means they couldn't study as much. Therefore, they had to find someone who was willing to do their homework so their grades wouldn't slip. That's when Layla came up with the plan to win me over as her boyfriend. The flirting, the pranks, they were all part of her plan. That was the truth. But Layla didn't know about the Spanish worksheets because her teammate Harper gave them to her. Turns out Hector is Harper's boyfriend. Didn't see that coming, right? But I was still super mad at Layla because she still used me. Then Layla took out some papers and showed them to me. Huh? It was homework with all B's on them. Then she told me, okay, I admit that at first I didn't like you. I only approached you to take advantage of you. But then I actually fell for you as I got to know you better, okay? So I stopped giving you my homework and did it on my own. So, her feelings for me were real too? I couldn't believe it. Eventually I forgave her and now we're happier than ever. I must say, when Layla first talked to me, I thought she was this crazy girl like Harley Quinn, who I could never like. But I was wrong. Turns out I'm the one who's crazy about her. So, I guess I have more in common with the Joker than I first thought.
Oh, I've never been in a negotiation that lasted this long before. I've been here since 3, and it's now 8. Worse still, I hadn't even mentioned the funding yet. I've tried, but it was Dane's fault. He kept on interrupting me and going off topic. As I looked at Dane, who was currently reenacting a soccer game with condiments, I wondered how on earth was he a part of the student council. He might have been a senior, but he was an average grade student who didn't seem to excel at anything. He also exaggerated everything and mainly just messed around. I should never have agreed with Dane to arrange the meeting here. Not only had I wasted 5 hours of my life, but it looked like the funding was a no deal. I couldn't take any more of this. Remind me never to listen to Dane, ever again. I grabbed my bag and was about to stand up when Mr. Johnson turned to me. Ruth, I love your idea. Funding all of it would be a bit of a stretch, but I can go to 80%. And if it becomes a yearly thing, I'll be happy to continue sponsoring it. I stared at him open-mouthed. Did I hear him right? Mr. Johnson, the owner of the local music shop, was actually agreeing to provide a big chunk of the funding for our student talent show? By the way, I like this Dane guy. Today's been fun. Dane wooed, yes, it's a dealio, and enthusiastically shook Mr. Johnson's hand. Wait, I was supposed to be the one to close the deal. Never mind. We had the funding. This was amazing. We did it! Dane punched the air. Hey, how did you? He gave a Cheshire cat grin as he replied, never expected that, did you? What do you think of me now, Ruth the new president? I shrugged and laughed. Hey, how about a celebratory hug, huh? He lunged at me with open arms. Well, why not? This deserved a celebration after all. We were jumping up and down, and I don't know, maybe I was delirious from the stupidly long meeting or something. But the next thing I knew, we were kissing. OMG! We immediately pulled away from each other and awkwardly looked the other way. After that, he drove me home in silence. Oh no, what was I thinking? Why did I, or anyone breathing, do that? It was Dane. Dane! Can you believe it? Well, okay, I suppose it'd been a difficult couple of months for me. As soon as I became president of the student council, my boyfriend Walter didn't congratulate me. No, instead he broke up with me. We'd been together for 2 years, but recently he'd spoken about marriage and buying a house. Not yet. I want to focus on my career first. But I guess me applying to the students' council and being all busy bee with work frustrated him even more. Now, I tried to distract myself with studying and council work, but I felt like I was getting ever closer to the edge of a cliff, one with hungry sharks circling the bottom. Ugh! And then there were the rumors being spread around school about me. Ruth's just a freshman. She won't be able to hack the pressure. And Ruth's so serious and boring. So I started working harder and harder to prove myself. Hence the talent show project. Only, geez, I was so exhausted, both mentally and physically. This funding news was fantastic. But what was going on with Dane? Maybe he has some kind of secret power of attraction or something. Anyway, after that incident, he flooded me with calls and messages, even though I was crazy busy. After the 12th call in a row, I stopped writing my essay and answered with an annoyed, "What? Hey there, how are you feeling about the weather today? My name is Ruth, not there, and I don't care about the weather, I'm busy." Busy enough to correct my words like that? I don't think so. Ugh, fine. I agreed to go out for a quick coffee with him just so he'd stop bugging me. I stirred my spoon around my coffee as I glared at him and said, "Will you stop calling me? I need to study." He stuffed the majority of his muffin into his mouth and took ages to chew it. Then he wiped his mouth onto the back of his arm and said, "You do realize all the other council members call you Military Ruth, right? Try not to be so difficult and chillax once, will you?" Wow, that sucked. I didn't expect to be liked by everyone, but I was working my butt off for the council, so they could at least appreciate what I was doing for them. I cleared my throat. I don't care. Work is work. I didn't become the president to make friends. "But I know you're not like that," Dane continued. "You might be going through a tough time. Still, you're the most stunning person I've ever met." My face brightened up, even blushed. What did he just say? "You're beautiful, strong, and independent." He reached out and took my hand, and I tried to ignore the fact it was sticky from his muffin. Ew. "I must be the luckiest guy ever to date a girl like you, Ruth. Those other girls are just jealous of you. I mean, you have this hunk, and they don't." Hold up. He said what? Date? I gave him a disgusted, "Who do you think you are?" look. Reading my expression, his face dropped. "Oh, I, thought there was something between us." I froze for a few seconds. Was I being too harsh? I mean, he was totally sweet saying those words earlier. Fine. Listen carefully. I'll hang out with you. Not dating. But you have to promise, swear, that you'll never, ever tell anyone about it. I don't know. I mean, he was so immature and annoying, but I guess he was also kind of fun to be around. He made me laugh, and I liked that. All I did was work, work, work. And perhaps that was why Walter broke up with me, wasn't it? Maybe when I hang out with Dane, I should practice being less serious. One Sunday, when we were having brunch at a random cafe of his choice, I asked about his graduation coming up that summer and his plan. "Honestly, I haven't thought any further than finishing my freshman year," he said between chewing on his sandwich. "How about you?" he asked. "Well, I want to go to an Ivy League college for a master, of course, preferably Dartmouth, and study social science. Then I want to work for the government, but high up, like a managing role, and really make an impact, Dane shrugged after I finished. "Yeah, nice plan," and kept digging in his food. I felt weird. Was I being unrealistic? Or was it just Dane's point of view? But to have a happy relationship, maybe it's best to compromise and accept the differences, right? I snapped myself back into the now. If this whole thing with Dane hadn't happened, I would still be in anguish and despair. It was strange, but I did feel better around him, unlike with Walter. So I should respect his opinions. Gotta learn from my mistake, right? One day, I was at a council meeting planning a fundraiser for the remainder of the talent show money. I decided it was time people saw the real Dane, so I made him event organizer. But this didn't go down well. As in the other council members' eyes, Dane was a lazy, idiotic puppet. Give him a chance. He's the one who persuaded Mr. Johnson to fund the talent show. Please, we never know other people's limits and abilities. Then this girl, Catherine, sarcastically said, "Of course you'd know his ability since he's your boyfriend." You suck at leading. All you care about is your personal feelings. I know. I'll date you. Then I may actually get given a job I deserve. My tongue was tied. I couldn't find a word to defend myself. And at the same time, I was really, really mad at Dane. And worse still, he hadn't even bothered showing up for the meeting. Afterward, I went round to Dane's house and furiously banged on the door. Yelled at him the moment he opened it. "How come people know that we've been hanging out?" Dane silently scratched his head, eyes open wide, and stared awkwardly at some random spot. "Answer me!" I continued, but still no reply. I pointed my finger at his face. "I just went through a hurricane of rage in a meeting with the council to put you in charge of the fundraiser event. And you didn't even bother showing up. You better do an amazing job, else we'll both be dead." Then I stormed off. Over the next few days, the rumors continued to circulate about me. Clearly, Dane had been bragging to everyone that he'd managed to score himself a stiff girl like me. That I was no tigress, more like a lovely kitten. Now everyone was staring and laughing at me, and made meow sounds at me in the corridors. Someone even filled my seat in the council room with cat food. This was horrible to deal with, but instead of supporting me, Dane went rogue from school for a full week. He also didn't arrange the venue for the fundraiser, meaning we had to reschedule the event. I was left looking bad, so the teacher gave me a lecture on responsibility and strongly advised me to leave the student council. So that's what I did. Catherine's in charge now. After that, I couldn't face school, so I locked myself away in my room and cried as I thought back to all the things that had happened. First, Walter left me. Then everyone else on the council mocked me. Then I lost my position on the council I worked hard for because I put my trust in the wrong person. Ugh, Dane. What he did hurt the most, as he was exactly what others described him as, childish and insensitive. I was torn between never wanting to see him again and also missing him like crazy. Now I had no one. I felt so alone. Ugh, darn it. Loneliness sucked. So when he called me, I answered. He told me he was outside my house. I guess I should at least hear him out, right? "Hey, beautiful, listen." He grabbed my hand and looked straight into my eyes. "It doesn't matter, okay? The council, the president position, those people don't matter. The most important thing is you being happy, and I'm gonna make you happy." I wanted so much to believe his words. So I let him take me out. We ended up in this noisy restaurant with singing waiting staff. He found it hilarious, but I felt so uncomfortable. Then on the way back, he dragged me into this arcade and left me so he could go on the zombie killing game. As I watched him spin around then shoot, I realized how different we were. I guess I was holding on to him because I'd lost everything else. Who was I anymore? I felt like a stranger to myself. This wasn't me, and Dane wasn't right for me. He rushed over to me and excitingly clung onto my arm. "Ruth, come see my high score." I shook my head and quietly said, "It's over." I pulled my arm free and walked off. After that, I kept to myself, and at school, avoided Dane and my former council members as much as possible. It did hurt when I saw the posters for the talent show around the school, but that wasn't my problem anymore. I did receive a message from Dane saying something about his graduation party, but I skipped it. The truth is, he's just not good for me. Life was a joke to him, and as a result of this, he left me feeling like I was a joke too. I felt so lost. So I'm going to spend the summer with my grandparents out in the country, away from everyone and everything. I need time to heal, so when I come back, I'll be strong, confident, and independent girl I once was. As I really do miss that version of me. Each one of us needs to learn how to overcome things by ourselves, without relying on others, especially when these others in question aren't any good for us.
Hey! I've been trying to find you at school today. I have big news, and it's bad. Real bad! Don't leave me hanging. Mom says we're defo moving to California by the end of the month. What? No way! That's a 2-day drive from here. Yeah, I know. But Mom's marrying David. The same David that's scared of spiders, cockroaches, and everything? Yeah, that guy. He's been trying to get her attention for ages, sending her flowers, playing the guitar on her porch. Then last week, he even climbed up the oak tree so he could hand her flowers through the bedroom window. Okay, that's kind of creepy. Ew. Tell me about it. But you know, the worst part is, I have to transfer to another school. No. Lisa couldn't move away. Who would I sit with at lunch? Who would I watch corny movies with? Ugh, we've been besties for years. We couldn't just be separated like this. No one would ever understand me like she did. We were like two halves of a whole. Her dad had passed away, so she only had her mom, while I only had my dad. And yep, that's my amazing dad. It's been just me and him for the past 10 years. I still remember that afternoon when my mom took her suitcase and left with another man. After that, me and Dad moved back here to our hometown, New Hampshire. It's only when I got a little older that I found out Mom and her lover scammed Dad out of everything. So Dad's been working his butt off to open his own repair garage to provide for us both ever since. It isn't fair. My dad's a hero, and he deserves to be with a better woman. Hold on. Yes, he deserves a better one. And who wouldn't be better than Lisa's mom? I needed to tell Lisa about my plan right now, so I immediately ran to my room and phoned her. Girl, I have the most genius plan ever to keep you and your mom here with me. Please, I'm all ears. Anything. I really don't want to move to Cali. Okay, listen. Let's set your mom up with my dad. He's a good guy, and that means we'll be sisters. We both squealed excitedly. Lisa always wanted to have a dad. A nice one, not that David creep. Ugh! I could see the envy in her eyes when I spoke about the funny pranks I played on my dad. Well, in contrast, my heart ached whenever she told me about the girly pamper days she had with her mom. Okay, first, research is important. We spent all night looking up their horoscopes, name astrology calculator, and even physiognomy. Whoa, they're a 98% match! But hey, nothing is perfect, right? Me and Lisa would make up for the missing 2%. The next day, we were both zombies due to the lack of sleep. But at least a proper plan had been set. I told Lisa to tell her mom, Mary, to come around on Saturday for my birthday. Yeah, it's not actually my birthday, but she's a presenter for a big news channel, so she's super busy. We needed to make up some special occasion, so she couldn't say no. Then I told my dad to prepare his signature dish to welcome my special guests. There's no way Mary could resist. That day, I was helping Dad with the ingredients when I heard the doorbell. I opened the door to see Lisa standing there with a pink frosted birthday cake. And by her side was her mom. Happy birthday, sweetie. This one's for you. Oh, something smells good. And so familiar. She continued. Hello? Mary? Jack? Why are you here? For Erin's birthday. And you? I'm her father. And FYI, today isn't her birthday. Yeah, jerk. Mary said under her breath while rolling her eyes. Excuse me? You dumped me for no reason. So what's that attitude? Oh, really? For no reason? My eyes darted from Dad to Mary. Huh? Why were they yelling at each other? This was very confusing, but I could guess that they used to date? OMG, what a small world! Okay, whatever, 'cause it's lunchtime now. And wow, Dad's legendary meatloaf smelled amazeballs. We sat down, and Mary glared at Dad as she took a bite of food. Then she blurted out, "Oh wow, I guess some things never change, huh? Your food is still super salty." "Oh really? But as I recall, someone still asked for seconds. Unbelievable." "Excuse me, but do you know each other?" Lisa innocently interrupted. There was an awkward silence. Then Dad said, "Yeah, we do. But this is the first time I've seen Mary since we broke up, right after I visited her studio for the first time." Mary looked flustered as she replied, "Lisa, you shouldn't have tricked me into coming here. Finish your food, then we're leaving." On hearing this, Dad ordered Lisa and me up to my room so he could talk to Mary in private. Only we hid behind the couch and listened in. Turns out, on that day, Mary took my dad to the studio to watch her first filming as a news presenter. After that, she'd passed by the waiting room and overheard Dad talking to someone. "I clearly heard that person ask you how I looked, and you said I was still the same old Mary. Do you have any idea that I spent 2 hours in makeup and was excited to show you?" Dad tried to chime in, but Mary wouldn't give him a sec. "Worse still, later you even told them you were over the moon I wouldn't be your girlfriend for much longer. Thus, to intercept that, I had to break up with you first." Oh my. So my dad was a playboy or something? Lisa and I swapped confused looks, then continued watching the show. My dad was dumbfounded, and then he said in a helpless voice, "Oh, Mary, things were not like that. I said that you look the same because you're always as beautiful as the day I met you. And about the other thing..." "Yeah?" I prepared a ring to propose to you, so you'd no longer be my girlfriend, but my wife." "What?" So they broke up because of an absurd misunderstanding and lost contact since then. Jeez, I thought adults were meant to know what they were doing. It sure didn't seem like it at times. Mary gave Dad an awkward smile, and they said that they could be friends. Then she told him about David and how she was marrying him on the 22nd of December. No! We couldn't let this happen. There had to be another way of getting them together. But that road was full of thorns and spikes, especially when Dad dropped a bombshell. His new girlfriend, Lucy. A few days later, when I was working on my art project, Dad walked into the room with her. Excuse me? She was wearing this super tight bodycon dress and had at least 7 layers of makeup on. Ugh. Then she even dared to pick up the photo of me with Mom and smirked. "Oh, how nice." I rushed over to her, snatched it out of her hands, and shouted, "Keep off my things! I don't like you!" She immediately glared at me. But then seeing Dad coming down from upstairs, she suddenly smiled and hugged me while whispering in my ear, "You don't, but you have to." Jeez, what a poisonous snake. But worse, when she left, Dad had this dumb grin on his face, and then he actually asked if I wanted her to be my new mom. Oh no, she'd hypnotized him for sure. In a rush, I called Lisa to tell her about it. She came up with the idea of asking her mom to join us at the Christmas market this week. Bummer. She refused. Apparently she had too much wedding planning to do. Ugh. And if you're thinking it couldn't get worse, then Dad invited Lucy along. So Lisa asked her mom to let her stay with me for a few days, so we could teach this Lucy some lessons. May the pranking commence. That morning, Lucy showed up in this fancy light blue dress and ordered Dad to get her a chocolate-covered waffle. What a shame. I accidentally knocked it all over her outfit. Oops! Then a fake fly somehow fell into her hot chocolate. Her eyes almost bulged out of her head when she drank that. But she just gave us a cunning smirk, then grabbed Dad's arm and cuddled close to him. Unbelievable! But you know, diamond cuts diamond. When Dad went to the restroom, with sparkling eyes, I said, "Lucy, I really admire a nice person like you. My dad's only a mechanic with $1,500 a month, but you still love him." so this isn't true. He ran his own business. But anyway... No way! He looks rich, though. Oh, he probably was just desperate to catch your attention. He bragged a little bit. And you're proud of that? That's not funny, sweetie. I am out of your dad's league. There's no way I'm putting up with a brat like you for such a poor man. Right at that moment, my dad returned and, no surprises, they broke up. Now she was out of the picture, Dad was free to win Mary over, right? We three went home, and I noticed that Dad was acting weird. He kept on pacing by the door. Then, when Mary arrived to pick Lisa up, he leapt to open it and blurted out to her, "Have you thought any more about us?" She didn't say anything, but I noticed them exchanging these sorry looks. Their love for each other was so obviously real, as they knew each other since they had nothing. Yet they weren't doing anything about it. It was already December 20th, meaning there were only 2 days left till the wedding day. I couldn't let our plan fail like this. I immediately grabbed my phone to call Lisa, but the ringing was next to me. She'd left her phone at my house. Dang! Then the next morning, I walked by her house to go to school as usual, but no one was home, and she wasn't at school either. Oh my, had they moved to David's already? I told Dad this right away when I got home. He thought for a second and asked me to get in the car ASAP to go to California. So our bumper 2-day road trip began. When we reached the wedding venue, it was empty. Oh no, we were too late. Dad looked devastated, so I put my arm around him and started to lead him out of there. But then the receptionist appeared and said, "Oh, didn't they let you know either? The wedding's been canceled." Dad's face lit up, and we both raced over to the car and started the long drive back. Oh, it felt like ages in the car, and now it was just 2 hours until Christmas Eve. The roads were full of beautiful Christmas decorations. I looked through the windows and saw people gathering with their families, while Dad and I were driving nonstop. How sad. We drove straight to Lisa and Mary's, but they were out, so we sat in the freezing cold on their doorstep and waited. Dad dozed off, his head resting on my shoulder. Bless. Then I saw them walking towards us. Oh man, you should have seen their shocked faces. I shook Dad awake, and he looked over at Mary. She dropped her bags and looked at us astonished. Then Lisa told us the whole story. Turns out, on the way to California, they met 2 amateur robbers who forced them to get out of the car. Mary immediately pounded them with her handbag, while David ran off and hid behind a tree with Lisa. When the robbers scampered off, Mary told David everything from the bottom of her heart. That although David was wealthy, that was not what she wanted. Instead, she just needed a man who could support and protect her. She'd been flattered by his gestures of love, touched by his persistence, and thought that love could be cultivated. But things weren't as simple as that. So they broke up, and the wedding was canceled. Dad and I were stunned. Then, with eyes prickled with tears, my dad said, "Mary, I'm sorry for letting you go. But it's not too late, is it?" Right after, he pulled the old ring from that day out of his pocket and got down on one knee and said, "Mary, will you marry me?" She cried out, "Yes!" Both Lisa and I were bursting with happiness. So now we both have a mom and a dad, and we're pretty much sisters. Yay! This is the warmest Christmas ever. Bye, Auntie. I waved to her. I promise I'll be fine at home alone. That's good. I'll be back soon, Bee. Then she left. That's my Auntie Anna. I was staying with her while my parents were on vacation. I was about to walk back into the living room when the doorbell rang, so I immediately ran to the door and looked through the peephole. Ah! It was Mom! I quickly opened the door and rushed out to hug her tightly. "Mommy! How come you're back so early?" Mom stroked my hair and softly said,
"Oh, sweetie, I came to pick you up. How can I leave my little princess alone? Now, hurry up and pack your things."
I gave a confused look. "But Auntie Anna's at the grocery store. Shouldn't we wait for her?" She shook her head.
"No, sweetie. I already called her."
So we quickly packed my things, and Mom led me outside to a rather old car, which was completely different from our usual BMW. "Mom, where's Dad? This isn't our car," I asked her. She knelt in front of me and, smiling, said,
"Daddy's waiting for us at the beach. It's going to be lots of fun."
I jumped up and down excitedly. Yay! I couldn't wait to build sandcastles and splash in the sea. This was so cool. On the way, I must have fallen asleep, as when I opened my eyes, it was already dark outside. I got out of the car and looked around. Where was the ocean? All I saw was some small house in an unfamiliar neighborhood.
"Beatrice, this is our new home. Just you and me from now on."
Mom's sudden words totally woke me up. "Mom, why? What about Dad?" I stammered.
"Listen, I'm sorry. I can't explain it to you at the moment. You're too young to understand."
I had so many questions flying around my head, but looking at Mom's sad face, I knew I shouldn't ask her anymore. The next morning, I woke up excited and curious about our new beginning here. I opened the curtain and saw a group of kids my age playing across the street. So, without thinking, I rushed outside to join them. "Hello, I'm Beach." Suddenly, my mom came out of nowhere, a frantic look on her face as she shouted,
"I've told you to stay inside!"
and pulled me back home. Everyone was gawping at us, including the man who lived across the street. It was so embarrassing. As soon as the door slammed shut, in a serious tone, she said,
"We just moved here. You shouldn't make friends with strangers that fast. And don't talk too much about yourself, okay?"
Mom had never minded me playing with other kids before, so why now? This didn't make any sense. After that, she only let me out of the house for school, and she always kept an eye on me, so that's why I couldn't make any friends here. I resented her so much. I was so lonely. One good thing about it was she didn't have any house rules, so I could spend all day watching cartoons while eating junk food, and she didn't mind at all. This was great, as before we moved here, Mom and Dad never let me do stuff like this. But eventually, I got sick of those junk foods. I felt kinda icky. I longed for Mom's special spaghetti with crab sauce, so I begged her to make it. At first, she refused, saying that she was very busy, so I kept on whining until she finally agreed. Later, I went to the kitchen for dinner, and the room was an utter chaos. Pots and pans everywhere. Mom looked messy too, as she passed me a plate of spaghetti and meatballs instead of her signature dish. Well, okay, it looked delicious anyway, so I took a full fork of it as Mom watched on. Poof! Water! I need water! Gosh, it's so salty. Mom quickly replaced my pasta plate with a box of fried chicken and said,
"Today I'm busy, so I was a bit distracted. Sorry, honey."
Her awkwardness made me laugh. "Nah, it's okay, Mom." Mom did seem really busy lately, as her phone was always buzzing. The calls even came late at night when I was asleep, so she always quietly went out to answer it. Guess it's hard being a single mom after all, so I tried to be more understanding. And just like that, time passed. Staying inside and having no friends became the norm for me. Still, I often sat by the window and stared longingly at the kids playing outside. Then one time, when I was doing this, Mom appeared and asked me if I wanted to go to the nearby amusement park. Wow, could there be anything better than this? I leaped up, clapped excitedly, then wrapped my arms around her. Honestly, the park was pretty small, and everything seemed kinda tired looking. But this didn't matter, as it was the best day I'd ever had. Mom never used to like rides or games, but today was different. She even got excited when she saw the beanbag throwing stall. She knocked the tins down in one go and won me this giant cuddly bunny. I've never seen her have fun like this before. My mom is so cool. Afterward, Mom left me sitting on a bench and she went off to get some ice cream. Suddenly, I saw her rushing back, and without ice creams. She pulled on my hand and in an urgent tone said, "We need to go home. We're moving." So we packed up our things and left in a rush. I kept on asking Mom what was going on, but she dodged my questions. During the car journey, I heard her mutter to herself, "We're going somewhere new. It'll be exciting. A new adventure. Yes, it'll be fine this time." I may have been young, but I wasn't stupid. I knew she was hiding something. But she's my mom, and I didn't want to upset her by bugging her with questions. So I stayed quiet and eventually fell asleep. Once again, I woke up in an unfamiliar place and stared out of the window. I wasn't as bothered about this place as I was about the last. I didn't want to get too attached to it, as I didn't know how long it'd be before Mom made us move again. But there was one thing that bothered me. Across the street was a man looking straight at our new house. He looked identical to our previous neighbor. Maybe he'd just moved here too? What a coincidence! I mentioned the man to Mom, but she told me she didn't know him, and then sternly told me never to interact with him. At school, I was the strange kid who didn't talk to anyone. The older I got, the worse this felt. And the other kids laughed at me, and I heard them call me weird behind my back. I felt so lonely and depressed. So at home, I often just sat by the window with a book and tried to pretend that the adventures I was reading about were happening to me. Worse still, Mom was acting even odder than usual. The other day when I got home from school, I found her chucking perfectly good food out of the fridge. Some were even brand new. I asked her what she was doing, and she replied, "It's gone off, so I'm getting rid of it." Then she started scrubbing the fridge. "The smell won't go. Why won't it go?" What was she talking about? Everything seemed fine. What's happening? Then I discovered that Mom often left the house late at night and didn't return till dawn. I knew if I asked her about this, she wouldn't say anything. So that night, I snuck out and followed her. Mom was wearing dark clothes with a hat and a big scarf covering her face, even though it's not that cold outside. Why the disguise? Then, can you believe it? I spotted her going over to the neighbor's house and cuddling him on his porch. I jumped out of the darkness and shouted, "Mom, what's going on? I thought we weren't meant to talk to this man." She gave me an alarmed look. At that moment, Mom received a text. In a panicked voice, she said to me, "Beatrice, we have to go. Now! I'll explain everything later, I promise." Right after that, the mysterious man waved at us and told us to get in his car. Then he sped through the night. After regaining my senses, I turned to my mom and asked, "I hope this explanation is good." Actually, we're in danger, honey. It's your dad. He's an imposter. I only figured this out when I was on vacation with him, and I've been running from him ever since." What? I'd never suspected my dad of being someone else. It made no sense. Then, through sobs, my mom continued to say that my real dad was actually a member of a secret organization, but he had been missing for a while, and now the organization was after us. She often received anonymous messages and calls threatening her. She didn't want me talking to strangers in case they were spies. And those times when she threw all the food out was because she'd received texts threatening to poison the food in our house. She wiped her tears away, then said, "This is Joe. We went to college together, and he's been such a help. We fell in love, but I didn't dare tell you because I was afraid you wouldn't understand." I looked at this Joe guy. I don't know. There was something off about him, but maybe I was just being paranoid. I mean, he had helped Mom out, right? What's that? Ever since I found out about the secret organization, I've been kinda jittery. What if they suddenly turn up and take me and my mom away? I know Mom's worried too, as she seemed so distant. I just want to make things better for us both. Then Christmas arrived. It was quite the special one, as for the first time since we went into hiding, we had guests. Well, one guest, Joe. We raised our glasses for a Merry Christmas, but instead of putting it down, my mom gulped it back in one go. "Mom, are you drinking tonight?" I asked skeptically. "Of course, my dear. It's Christmas. Let me tell you, I'm no less than a man when it comes to drinking." I chewed on my lip as I thought about this. Mom had an alcohol allergy, and at the most, she only had tiny sips. Suddenly, a thought came to mind. Maybe Dad wasn't the imposter after all. Maybe it had been Mom all along. She enjoyed the roller coaster rides, though to my recollection, Mom was afraid of heights. She couldn't cook. She now loved Joe, a strange man, and she could have downed alcohol without being ill. If this was true, then who could I trust now? Something wasn't right. I could feel it in my gut. So the next day, I secretly went to the cops instead of school as usual. Then I found out something crazy. Turns out, my real parents had been looking for me for over the past 6 years. OMG! As for the mother I was living with, who was she? I tried to stay calm while waiting for the police to contact my parents first. And as soon as they got there, the three of us broke down in tears. That's when my real mom told the whole truth. Actually, she had a twin sister called Linda. No one had ever known about Linda, as due to her debt problems, my grandpa rejected her and forbade her to ever show up in front of anyone in the family. But my mom couldn't disown her own twin, so she secretly gave her money. Then one time, Linda was asking for too much that Mom turned her down. Unexpectedly, she came and took me away to pressure my mom to send her more money. During that time, my mom kept transferring her money to make sure I'd be provided for. She hadn't given any information about Linda to the cops, though, because Mom still wanted to talk to her first, though, so that her sister wouldn't end up in trouble. Wow, this was a lot to take in. After that, Mom ran over to Dad, who's in line to talk to the police. She grabbed his hand and begged him to give Auntie Linda a chance. As you see, I missed out on having a normal childhood because of my aunt, and what she did was wrong. But there's a part of me that will always care for her, as she raised me for all these years. And my heart urged me to say, "Dad, I didn't want to turn her in either." My dad looked at me hesitantly, but in the end, he nodded in agreement. So we decided to deal with it ourselves without the intervention of the police. Then, the next day as planned, I was in the front yard with my fake mom when her identical twin marched up to her house and confronted her. Once my Auntie Linda got over the initial shock, she confessed everything to me. It was sad, but glad that it's all over now. Mom paid off her sister's debts with one condition, that she would never, ever get near me again. Now I'm back home with my actual parents. It's going to take some getting used to, as I've forgotten how to make friends, and going outside alone makes me nervous. Looks like the memories of the adventure with my uninvited Aunt Linda might follow me for quite some more time. I know I have to try and move forward. I can't get back the past 6 years, but I can do my best to try and embrace the future.
I wonder who'll hit the jackpot this week. How about that blonde Joseph? Nah, he's too slow. Or there's Arthur. But last time that weakling even struggled to carry my tray of food. Seeing as there's a science test this week, I suppose I better pick someone smart. That's when I spotted Jace. His dad's my family's driver. Yeah, that nerd definitely won't let me down. So I'm Victor. I'm 17 years old and I'm rich. My father's contributed so much money to this school that he has more power than the principal. So no matter what mischief I cause, the teachers know it's in their best interest to turn a blind eye. And look, I'm not only rich, but also handsome. Everyone wants to be my friend. Everyday girls chase after me, but tough luck for them. I'm already dating the hottest girl in school, Jessica. As for the boys, it's only fair they get to spend time with me. So each week I choose one of them to hang around with me and do my errands. Hey Jace, congrats dude, it's your lucky week. Sorry, could you choose someone else? Jace said timidly, then walked away. What? No one ever dared refuse me. I pulled his hand back, but he even spilled my juice box. That's it, nerd. You are so dead. The next day I was standing by my locker instructing Arthur to sort out my books when I overheard Jace talking to his friend about the science essay. Ugh. I totally forgot that we had to submit it online by midnight instead of in class. I know. I'll make Jace's assignment mine. Oh, genius. That afternoon I told my PE teacher that Jace was on duty. So she made him go tidy up the gym after class. Meanwhile, I went to his laptop and copied his work. Well, essay, done. Easy peasy. A few days later, the science teacher called the two of us to the office and asked why our assignments were identical. But hey, not only had I submitted it first, but I also had my foot on his neck. So of course I got to keep my A and Jace got an F. Ha! After school, Jace followed me to the car. Then when I was about to get in, he leaped in front of me and slammed the door shut. You're a cheater. You stole my assignment. Nah, I'm the one who has to say that. I submitted it first. Hearing us arguing, Jace's father stepped out of the car and frantically apologized to me for what his son did. You should know who you are. Your dad's just a servant, which makes you nothing. I smirked. Then I snatched the key from his dad's hand and jumped in the car. I'll get home by myself today. Bye, losers. That nerd had ruined my mood, and now I needed to cheer myself up with some fun. Oh boy, that party was awesome. As I passed through a tunnel, I turned the music volume up to max and swayed along. Suddenly, I looked up to see a truck whizzing towards me, so I swerved just in time and crashed into the road railing. Jeez, what the? I mumbled, then got out of the car. Anyway, I left my car there and got an Uber home. But hang on. Why was everyone driving on the left side of the road today instead of the right? Maybe the combination of alcohol and dizziness was making me imagine stuff. I opened my eyes and stretched out my arms. Ouch! This wasn't my room. In my drunken haze, I must have wandered into someone's shabby home. I rushed out of there and ran downstairs to find my mom and dad in the kitchen having breakfast. Victor, hurry up, else you'll be late. Oh, don't forget you're helping your mom out in the grocery store after school. What's with all this role-playing? Where am I? Terrified, I ran outside to check. What? The address is correct, 138 Riverside, but my house was a magnificent mansion. What's this hovel? Surely this is just some dream, right? I rushed back into the house and shouted, Mom, Dad, what's happened to our mansion? Son, are you dreaming? Haha, us rich enough to have a mansion. Now that's an unlikely thought. Now go change your clothes and I'll take you to school. No way. This was just a bad dream. Which often ends when we reach another location, right? Maybe when I get to school, everything will return to normal. Oh, school looks exactly the same. I was so relieved. I walked along the corridor and greeted people. Huh? Why were they blanking me? Ugh, have they forgotten who's the boss around here? But never mind, there's my honey bunch Jessica. I ran over to her and kissed her cheek. But I hugged my cheek in shock. My head was spinning, then suddenly someone nudged me from behind. It was Jace? I grabbed his collar. How dare he mess with me right in front of Jessica? Get your hands off my boyfriend. You're Jace's choice this week, so mind your attitude. Jace chose me? Who do you think you are? A dog-poor dude like you wouldn't be able to have a proper life and to attend this school without my family. Take a look at yourself. Honey, ignore him. Let's go. Jessica rubbed his arm and then they both left. I stood there dumbfounded. What on earth was going on? I felt like I tumbled into an alternate universe. I slapped myself in the face to snap out of it. Ouch! Why wasn't I waking up from this nightmare? This all started with that tunnel, right? If that was the door into this world, then it would also be the door out of this insanity. So I got in a cab to go back there. But wait, where was the tunnel? I made the driver go back and forth a few times, but it wasn't there. Then I ran out of money for the ride back, so the driver just left me there. Bewildered, I wandered around aimlessly till I reached a grocery store, where I spotted my mom working. Gosh, my mom, who always had servants around, now had to work her butt off? I couldn't bear seeing her like this and rushed over to help her. The next day I woke up early and thought that I'd choose a decent outfit to go to school. Well, life has to go on, so while I'm still stuck here, I should at least play my part. But, this version of me has terrible fashion taste. And look, now I've turned into a real nerd. I need to change it up a bit. When I arrived at school and opened my locker, there was a list of orders from Jace. What? Clean all of the dirt off his sneakers? This was nonsense. So I threw the piece of paper into the trash. Then out of nowhere, Arthur quickly picked it up and whispered into my ear, "Dude, I suggest you do as Jace says." Why? He's ridiculous. To keep the peace. No one actually likes him. We're only nice to him because we don't want any trouble. And seeing Jace approaching, Arthur hurried away. Over the next few days, I saw it firsthand. People sucked up to Jace, but then behind his back, they were mean about him. He walked around like he ruled the school. He even got one kid expelled just because they reported him when he cheated on an exam. Such a spoiled brat. Also, Jessica was such a gold digger. One time I caught her flirting with one of those basketball guys. I even overheard her say, "If Jace wasn't a rich kid, I wouldn't look at him twice. He's just an ATM to me." Hang on, if Jess thought that about Jace, then did she think the same way about me when we were dating? So all this time, Jace never had a real friend, just like me before. Honestly, he was detestable, but pitiable at the same time. After that, I noticed that Jess kept on giving me these flirty looks. I didn't want any trouble, so I ignored her. Then one time when I was in the hallway, she stormed over to me and yelled, "Why are you avoiding me? No one ever rejects me." I was trying to stay away from her. Then, from nowhere, Jace appeared throwing a tantrum. "What's this about?" I didn't have a chance to explain as Jess immediately rushed over to Jace. "Honey, he keeps approaching me. He won't leave me alone." "It's not like that. She's using you." I looked at him in panic. "Parking lot, 3:30 p.m. You'll pay for messing with my girlfriend." Then the two walked away, hands in hands. So after school, I nervously went to the parking lot. He threw the car key at me and sneered, "Drive. You better do as I say or else I'll make sure you're expelled." It didn't look like I had much of a choice. So I decided to go with him to find out what that maggot would do. He made me drive him home. Simple enough. But then as soon as I opened the door, my dad appeared, and in a pleading voice said to Jace, "Please, sir, don't have my son expelled." "Dad, what are you doing?" "Apologize to him at once, no matter what the reason is." Dad looked at me with steady eyes. Jace sneered at my dad and said, "How about you take the blame so we won't get expelled?" Then he threw a bunch of money at my dad's face. "You're fired." I shouted at him, "You can't treat people awfully just because you have money." "Victor, stop. You're wrong." "Please, I saved you from the accident, so please forgive my son." Then Dad pulled one trouser leg to reveal his artificial leg. That was the first time I saw my dad cry. Wait, this reminded me of what happened last year. I was being such a jerk to this guy that he purposefully drove towards me for vengeance. But Jace's dad darted forward and pushed me out of the way. I know he was badly injured, but as an insouciant boy, I didn't think it was a big deal. Whoa, I really was so arrogant. I expected everyone to bow down to me, and I actually thought everyone wanted to be my friend, when in actual fact, I had no true friends at all. My head felt like it was going to explode. I wanted to run away, so I jumped into the car and drove away without thinking. I stopped the car when I saw it, the tunnel that had changed my life. Suddenly, this blinding light shone straight into my eyes. The next thing I knew, both me and the car were gravitating towards the light. Huh? Where am I? It looks like a hospital. Then I heard a yelp of delight and someone held my hand tightly. Oh, it was my mom. "Thank goodness you're awake," she said, as tears streamed down her cheeks. "Mom, Dad, why am I here? What day is it today?" "Son, it's May 22nd. You've been in a coma for the past 3 months. We weren't even sure if you were going to make it." It turns out that day, on the way home from the party, in the tunnel, I had a terrible car crash and ended up in a coma. So what I'd been through was just a dream, right? But the odd thing was that the time I'd lived in that mysterious world completely coincided with the time when I was in the coma. Could parallel universes be physically real? Whatever that strange universe was about, one thing was for sure. I'd learned my lesson. After being discharged from the hospital, I went back to being Victor, Jack a dandy. But don't get me wrong, I was not the extravagant me of the past. No, I'm a changed guy. The first thing I did when I returned to my normal life was to break up with that gold digger Jessica. But the hungry leech kept begging me to get back together. How shameless. Next, I for sure have to stop making other kids do my errands, and started to have small talk with them instead of giving orders. Now there was only one thing left to do. I needed to make amends with Jace. I asked my parents to give his dad a raise, and also throw a little dinner party this weekend to invite his family around. As I felt bad that I haven't had a chance to thank Jace's dad properly for what he did for me last year. Of course, my parents gladly agreed, and said that they're proud of me for being so thoughtful. So I'm preparing a little peacemaker gift for Jace too. I bet this is gonna make him geek out all the way.